Okay, we are so excited here to be with the creator, the president of the Lean Startup Movement, who we had an opportunity to talk to right before the first one launched. So you look back now 4 years, right? You look at this incredible movement that you've made. I mean, first of all, tell me the biggest shift in thinking that you're starting to see people in the crowd have here.
First of all, thank you, and it's great to see you after after all these years. We're just talking about how different it is this year.
Monumental.
Monumental. I mean, the conference has grown exponentially. I mean, literally exponentially over the last 4 years. And I got to correct you though. It's not my movement. I'm not the one who made that happen. The entrepreneurs around the world who've embraced this and made it their own, are the ones who both made the movement successful, and the conference is just a place for us to gather at the end of the year and celebrate what has already been accomplished. We don't drive it forward here. We celebrate,
You gave
what people have
everybody a
accomplished.
tool, right?
Well,
You gave everybody a framework. It was a conversation start. I mean, I know this stuff existed before, but the book was the framework, and that's,
Well, I
at
appreciate that.
meetups now we can have conversations that are meaningful.
Look, having a shared conceptual framework for understanding the components of startups and why, like fundamentally, why startups behave differently than we're used to. I mean, that's an accomplishment, and I'm very proud of that. And you're asking, like, what are the ahas? Like, to me, what we're starting to see, and we talked about this morning. People got loved MVP, get out of the building,
Yeah.
continuous flow. Certain specific concepts people latch onto and they get excited about. But to me, the aha we're starting to see now is that none of those techniques are valuable in and of themselves. They rest on a foundation of a philosophy of long-term thinking. If you intend to build a company that's going to matter, then you will care about building the right kind of company, the kind of company that is built to learn, the kind of company that can adopt these kind of practices and can really take advantage of the creativity and talent of its employees. And that's an old lean manufacturing Toyota product. Like, people always talk about respect for people as like a primary lean tenet. It's impossible to actually achieve that if you're just focused on tactics. People who are looking for the quick win, the quick flip, just sell
Doesn't
out to a
work.
bigger company, like they don't really want up creating something of value. And so we're starting to see people make that connection, because people initially they heard lean startup, oh, it's about rapid experiment. First of all, people thought it was about being cheap, saving money, cheaper office chairs.
Yeah, that's
No, it's
that's
about
the
being
biggest
speed.
misconception.
Biggest
right off the
misconception by
bat,
far.
right?
We get that a lot. It's literally 5 years, a month ago, that I coined the phrase lean startups. It's literally only been 5 years. And 5 years ago, financial crisis was going on. So it was very valuable to be known as a lean startup guy during a financial crisis. People were like, oh, help me save money. Can you get me a better office lease? Yeah, right, exactly. People were very excited about getting cheaper office chairs. And I would come in and I would say, listen, I appreciate that, but I can't help you get better chairs, but I can help you go faster. And that's important whether you're in an upturn or downturn, crisis, like fundamentally learn faster. So people got the speed part of the message. But then some people were like, oh, if it's just about rapid experimentation, I could just look at the data will tell me what to do. I can abdicate my responsibility as an entrepreneur to have a vision. And I tried to remedy that as much as I could in the book. The book says, section 1 of my book's called Vision. It's like right there right there up front, because science is only as good as your hypothesis. Where does the hypothesis come from? It doesn't come from the data.
Absolutely.
Like, fundamentally comes from your mind. And so I think that connection, that we need to take short-term, quick action in the support of a long-term vision, people are just starting to really grasp that and grasp onto it. I'm very excited about
And they're doing amazing things. Eric, where do you see people get stuck?
Well, every place you can accomplish something is a place you can get stuck. But I would say the number one biggest, sticking point, far more than staying in the building, believing in business plans, all the usual stuff we talked about. The number one thing is, if you are a leader and you want to be more innovative, you want your team to be more innovative, and you're not getting those results that you want, you have to be willing to look in the mirror, and now you're looking at the problem. And as Lean Startup has gotten more popular and people jumping on the bandwagon, and me and all these other experts are running around doing consulting and all that stuff, like people, so I get the call all the time from leadership, senior management of some company. Hey, bring me in. Okay, Eric's here. Tell us who to fire. Give us some slogans, some pithy phrases, like get us inspired. I'm like, you do not have a lack. Your problem is not a lack of inspiration. It is not a lack of good ideas. It is not a failure to execute. It is 100% that your senior leadership themselves, by their behaviors, actions, and the systems that they have created, are driving innovation out of your company systematically.
Dead on.
And I have said that 100% to multi-billion-dollar massive companies and to like 20-person companies. Because as soon as that dysfunction sets in, It sets in. So it's like, doesn't, whatever size you are doesn't matter. What matters is, are you as the leadership of that company driving people to use their creativity and express their full potential?
And what happens when they get it? So you tell me that, and I said, you know what? It is, I am the problem. What happens? Do you
Yeah.
start to see
Well,
some
usually,
changes?
to be fair, usually I get thrown right out of the room. That's usually the last conversation
But
I
you
ever
don't
have
have
with senior
anything to
management.
lose, right?
Well, I don't
You're
care.
here to
Listen,
help.
I'm always, listen, I'm
Yeah.
just visiting. And a lot of places where senior management has kicked me out, their employees go on to start companies, and then they call me. And they're like, well, those guys were bozos. But we want to do this right from the beginning. So I play the long game. I'm like, hey, I'm just visiting. You don't have to do what I say, but maybe I'll catch you on your next company. When senior management gets it, it's cool, because then you have to do two things at once. We start to work tops down to get senior management to change the systems, accountability systems especially, compensation, metrics that are used for team formation and team success, getting teams structured properly, so not part-time committees of functional silos, but like cross-functional, dedicated small teams. When we start to see that, that is an enabler of innovation. If you're willing to make those investments, it's a prerequisite. It doesn't guarantee you even one success, because the actual work is done by teams, and those teams need to know, well, what do I do every day? You're really asking people to do a culture shift into this new way of working. So you have to work both tops down and bottoms up at the same time. So like the companies that have been most successful adopting this, at least where I've been involved, we've been able to work simultaneously with top management and coach individual teams, starting out one at a time, to prove that the model works and to adapt it to their culture and to figure out, well, what do we need to do to make it work in this specific company. At the end of the day, every technique, every rule book, everything, it's got to be company context and culture specific. So it has to be made, the companies that have done this have had to make it their own. And in fact, at the end of that, sometimes they call it lean startup and sometimes they don't. And that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Terminology doesn't matter. Do they conceptually, do they have the right framework? Then I'm 100% satisfied.
So you bring a different perspective, because you've got the practical aspect of it. You've done it.
Mhm.
Now you're seeing it in action from other people. And you asked Reed a brilliant question about the team.
Yeah.
So if for people who are listening right now, for people who are starting businesses right now, what should that initial core group look like?
There's no universally right answer. I mean, I have seen it work. Solo founders, team of 5, team of 10. I mean, I personally, if I had to pick, I like the team of 5.
Okay.
5 to 10 at the most. What they call at Amazon the 2-pizza team. A team that you can feed with 2 pizzas. Okay, that's it. If you start to get too big,
knows,
yeah,
right?
right. Start to get too big, the pizza runs out, and you have a problem. Like that, there's something special about that size team. Now, in order for it to work, everybody on the team has to be there by choice. You always joke in Silicon Valley, you don't get assigned to a startup. You don't wake up one day and here are your papers. You're now transferred to the startup. Everyone is there by choice. Everyone is there full time. So a huge dysfunction I see in corporate America is people working part-time on 20 projects, 5% each. It's the multitasking and the handoffs that requires are fatal. And the third requirement is you have cross-functional representation from every function that's going to be needed to make the team a success, which you don't always know at the outset, so it's a little bit tricky. But at least, if it's going to be a product-oriented startup, at least design, engineering, marketing, some form of somebody who can think about the framework Reed talked about today: growth, engagement, revenue. Like somebody with some business skills, somebody with some marketing skills, somebody with some distribution skills, some with product skills. So some mix. The trick is why startup founders and early startup employees are so valued is there's a lot of them that are simply cross-trained. So you can you can check multiple of those boxes with one person who's able to go from area to area. Now that's really great. But people sometimes say, well, I can't start my startup until I find a unicorn. It's like, well, good luck, buddy.
It ain't gonna happen.
If you don't have that skill, you may need to have more people, or you may have to go without. I mean, I've seen a lot of amazing teams where nobody on the team, like all engineering teams, they don't know a thing about marketing. Sometimes what they do is they go out and hire a marketer. But sometimes one of the engineers just says, well, how hard can it be? I'll learn. Now you can't just be like, I'm an expert in marketing, because you don't know anything about it, any more than you would trust a marketing person to be like, I've decided I'm an expert in engineering. But like, if someone's willing to make the sincere effort to try, I've been amazed what teams can accomplish.
Okay, so I'm going to get kicked out of here because the president's got people lined up. But one last question. You talk about marketing, and that's what kills companies and what makes companies. And Lean has its own philosophy on marketing. Give us 60 seconds.
Sure. Well, so in an established company, there's a distinction between product and marketing as two separate functions of the corporation. But if you think about as the startup, if you play the big bang of a startup becoming a big company, now play the tape in reverse. what happens, like you have these well-established galaxies,
Sure.
but now run the tape in reverse back to the Big Bang. All those boundaries and silos and distinctions break down in small scale. So I actually think that in a startup, the product is the marketing is the product. Everything that the customer experiences in their interactions with the company is the product that the company makes.
Absolutely.
Which means that you need an incredibly tight integration between product and marketing. Even so, I know I would go so far as to basically lock engineering and marketing in the same room and say, you guys do not come out of that room until you have a joint plan of action that you're both 100% bought into. And that can be very difficult because a lot of people have been trained in the model where engineering does their thing, hands it off to marketing, then they do their thing. And if no widgets are sold, everybody points like this. Well, marketing says engineering, the product sucks. It's like, oh, it would have been great if you just marketed it properly. It's like, I was with a company recently, they have a product in the market for 15 years. This year, they sold the exact same number of units as they sold in the first year. And they can't agree. It's been 15 years whose fault it is.
That's unbelievable.
Marketing says this product sucks. Engineering says this product's being badly marketed. And you're like, guys, let's run some experiments.
We're still on the same team, right?
Yeah, right.
We're still on the same
and,
team.
and of course, after 15 years of failure, they hate each other's guts, and there's a lot of bad feeling, all these problems. But it's like, guys, surely we can come together, and hey, we don't have to agree. Let's run some experiments. And that, to me, is the key to applying lean in a marketing context. You got to say, look, marketing fundamentally is about really understanding what the customer wants. And the only way to find that is through experimentation. You can't think your way to it.
Here he is, the voice of lean movement that's, I think, just starting, leanstartup.com.